Gettable programs with them wherever they go. As a subscriber, you can also listen live at airtime, online, anywhere in the world, or browse through our archives of over 6,000 hours of legendary broadcasts. Subscribe now by taking the link at the top of Rense.com and enrich your mind with the most unique panorama of vital information and the best independent, honest journalism in radio. Look for the Subscribe Now link on Rense.com and give yourself the knowledge you need for these unprecedented times. You're listening to the Rense Radio Network, nationwide and world.
Oxygen. It's nature's oldest therapy and plays an essential role in destroying viruses, bacteria, mold, yeast, and fungus, and keeping the human body healthy and strong. Now, you can give your body and your immune system a mega boost of disease-fighting oxygen with all-natural Oxy-C. With so many people now leading a sedentary indoor lifestyle, most are in a chronic state of oxygen deprivation, which sets up a perfect environment for disease, general fatigue, and a host of other symptoms. Oxy-C is yours in simple, convenient capsules. Nothing to mix, nothing to hassle with. Take it with juice or water anytime. Feel a cold or flu approaching? Have no energy or spark anymore? Try all-natural Oxy-C and prepare to be amazed. Oxy-C is only available from New Earth Health Solutions at Rense.com. Look for the New Earth banner at Rense.com.
There are 3 factors that determine the rate at which your body will repair itself. 1 is the amount of growth factors in your system. 2 is the amount and quality of complete proteins in your diet. And 3 is the health of your liver. After age 28, your ability to repair declines by 10% each passing decade. So by age 40, it has declined by 12%. By age 50, 22%. And by age 70, it has declined 42%. Advances in nutritional science enable you to overcome this rate of deterioration. Synergy One is a powerful product that activates your body's ability to repair. Within 1 month of usage, 96% of people report that they sleep better, have more energy, a better mood, need less food, and feel stronger. Many people have reported back, joint, and muscle pain going away. Women have reported hot flashes going away, and both genders have reported losses of body fat and a return of their sex drives. Call 888-988-3325. That's 888-988-3325. Or visit sgn80.com. That's sgn80.com.
Scientists in England have succeeded in stabilizing the time-honored substance in garlic that destroys harmful bacteria, viruses, molds, yeast, and fungus. This all-natural microbe killer is called Allicin C, and it's now available to you in 100% vegetarian capsules only on the New Earth page at Rense.com. This powerful broad-spectrum antimicrobial agent is harmless to friendly bacteria and has been concentrated to equal an astonishing 35 cloves of garlic in each vegetarian capsule. Think about it. The antibacterial, antiviral strength of 35 odorless cloves of garlic in just one capsule. Allicin C is so effective it even destroys superbug MRSA in test after test. Allicin C is truly an incredible advance in natural medicine, and with the threats of bacterial and viral diseases and pandemics growing, no home should be without it. Learn more and order Allicin C on the New Earth page at Rense.com.
You've heard the ads on this radio station about Royal Velvet. You know you want and need the benefits that Royal Velvet offers, but you haven't gone to the website RoyalVelvetNow.com. You've procrastinated. You haven't started your journey towards dramatic improvements in that vim, vigor, and energy you've always wanted. Reward yourself. You deserve it. No, really. All you have to do is go to RoyalVelvetNow.com, click on the rinse icon in the upper right-hand corner, and order a couple bottles of Royal Velvet, which is a month's supply, and you're on your way to experiencing the most life-changing product in the world. Oh, by the way, to experience just how powerful Royal Velvet is, do what thousands of our clients have done. Stop taking all your supplements and just take Royal Velvet. Do it for a month. You will feel better, look better, and be dramatically better. And besides being blown away by the results, you'll also be ecstatic over the huge amount of money you saved. There are 1,440 minutes in a day. It takes less than 5 minutes to place an order at RoyalVelvetNow.com. Go there now. Your life will never be the same.
Did you know the Earth's natural magnetic field has declined 90%, vanished over the last 4,000 years? We know that the human body repairs and rejuvenates itself during sleep, but without a normal negative polarity magnetic field around us, rejuvenation simply cannot happen properly. The ingenious Magnetico Sleep Pad restores the Earth's lost magnetic field, enabling us to sleep far better each night and regain maximum health. This negative polarity pad is so powerful, you place it under your mattress pad on top of the box spring. I've slept on a Magnetico Sleep Pad for over 25 years and owe a great portion of my ability to work hard to the physical rejuvenation I receive each and every night from the powerful magnetic field I sleep in. Visit MagneticoSleep.com and watch inventor Dr. Dean Bonley explain it all to you. That's MagneticoSleep.com.
Hi, this is Jeff Rentz. Royal Raymond Rife was without question the most gifted medical scientific genius of our age. He discovered that most disease-related microbes die quickly when exposed to their own specialized resonant radio frequencies. The BCX411 Rife-type frequency instrument has received the highest praise on several continents for its precision, simplicity of operation, and successful research experiment. The BCX, with its comprehensive manual, allows you to select the frequencies you wish to experiment with for the length of time you want to run them. The BCX handheld plasma ray tubes and RF radio carrier wave, like Rife used, are the absolute state-of-the-art in Rife frequency research. For full information and pictures, take the New Earth link at the top of Renz.com. Settle for nothing but the best in Rife research with the BCX411. Again, just take the New Earth link at the top left corner of Renz.com. Okay, and welcome back. Hour number 2, and we're going to talk to Dr. Bill Deagle this hour. We usually get together with Bill once a month. He has been fighting a terrifically virulent flu, and he couldn't even talk last Thursday. I mean, I've never heard him sicker. He is doing much better tonight. This is a nasty thing that probably is the same thing that's been running around killing hundreds of people in Ukraine. And I guess in Russia there have been fatalities too. It's a nasty strain. Smells of bioweapons. It smells of a tweaked influenza virus turned loose somehow. Bill, welcome back. Glad you're feeling better.
Oh yeah, I'm feeling much better. Of course, I have the armamentarium of our NutriDefense, which I designed, the Tesla-activated monatomic superconductor iodine called Nutriodine. Allicin Med, which is a version of the Alamax Alamed that you're never familiar with, but I have a German base that's 200 milligrams more. And our Silver 100, which is the only ionic silver in the world that is in its lethal phase against viruses. So we have all of those nutraceuticals, and thank God that I had them, because I'm certain this is the kind of flu that if I wasn't taking nutraceuticals, it would have put me in the hospital, probably on a ventilator.
Oh, yeah.
I recovered literally within a week by doing this. Now, I want to go over some of the things, because I managed to read some of the articles by Yuichi Shimatsu, who did an excellent job. But I'm going to go a little further. And I want to close the loop, because I'm a medical legal expert, certified in every specialty, including infectious disease. And I'm going to explain, without getting too technical, some simple principles that if it was in an international court of justice in The Hague or a Supreme Court or a grand jury, I could get indictments for Intrexon, Oxitec, and the governments and the agencies like the Gates Foundation that put this gene plague out. And I know that Yuichi did a bang-up job with putting a lot of information together, but I'm going to go a few steps further. And I'm going to summarize with a few statements. The first thing is the Zika virus is the least of our problems, believe it or not. And this is in contradiction to Henry L. Nyman. Zika virus It has been around since 1947. It was actually patented by the very same foundations that supported the Nazi eugenics programs, the Rockefeller Foundation. And there have been testing technologies, PCR and so on, for saliva, etc., for a very long time. In fact, it persists and it's easier to find the acute phase in saliva than even in blood when you look at the tests. The real thing here is what I call the first known trans-species gene plague that's been released. And what I find often is the best thing to do is to pull up some of my references so that people will say, I'm not just pulling this out of my hat or some other body part. Okay?
It's a family program, Bill. Be careful.
Right. Well, I'm going to, this is pretty scary stuff. But I'm going to use, try to use not technical terms. The first thing that has to happen is people have to understand what happened is that the primary two effects are primarily attacks on the nervous system, which showed up a dramatic increase in the rate of microcephaly and Guillain-Barré paralysis. Now, in the past, Guillain-Barré was relatively rare, and so was microcephaly.
Right.
Guillain-Barré paralysis and microcephaly can occur with other filoviruses, including cytomegalovirus and other viruses.
Otherwise known as CMV. Remember, Zika has been around since 47 or 48. It's been here. It's been in the populace. We know about it.
Right. I'm going to explain, though, a few holes in the logic to show that what Yoichi is showing is actually the central problem, which is the gene plague. But it's more dangerous than even what he said, and I'll explain how that is.
Well, we talked earlier today, and pay attention, ladies and gentlemen,
right, okay,
because
so
this is really grim stuff.
Right,
scary.
This is extremely grim, okay? If you were, let's say, trying to terraform the planet and destroy the biosphere for a species coming in from another world,
right,
you'd want to destroy the genetics of the biosphere so that organisms couldn't normally produce their own.
You'd want to introduce complete genetic chaos.
You'd actually introduce genetic chaos so animals and plants wouldn't produce vitamin mineral levels, tastes,
be
able to reproduce themselves, would have all kinds of genetic horrors happening, like, to the species and trans-species. For example, when and I'm just going to quote here a research study. This is Terminator Insects Give Wings to Geno Invaders. This is published, by the way, March 19th, 2001 in the SIS report. And the Dr. Mei-Wan Ho first exposed this in 2001 in his report, and then exposed it in 2014. And basically what he talked about is they'd already approved the release of a thing called a GM pink ballworm. And this ballworm was actually released to try to get rid of the insects that are eating away at the cotton crop in Georgia. So they already did this, okay? And he predicted that there would be trans-species transfer of genes and recombinations that would get into other insects, other animals, and in humans to start screwing up genetics.
Trans-species transfer of genes. Trans-species. This is a critical thing. Yeah.
Right. So in other words, any double-stranded DNA, whether it's plant, animal, bug, whatever, it could be a gibbon monkey or it could be a rat or a bat.
As long as it's got a double strand and it's in the GM business. All right.
Right. So you're making GM organisms that can then jump these genes. They're called literally riddle or jumping genes, or they call them piggyback, P-I-G-G-Y, capital B-A-C. What these do is they have their own endonuclease, so they can insert themselves in one or more places in the genome. Now, what you have to understand is they have this and also a thing called a CRISPR protocol. So they can gene edit and change and literally create trans-species organisms. They announced last fall in Britain they can now create an individual child with up to 32 parents. They can do this today. And they're openly talking about it, but I knew that it was available decades ago. Because when they recruited me in 1978 to work at UCLA at the VA hospital, I was going to work on the neurological side with Dr. Wallace Tortolot on the Super Soldier program. And I spoke not only in the Royal Commission on Reproductive Technologies in 1992 in Canada, but I spoke in 1997 in Zurich, Switzerland to the Private Board of Human Life International and gave exquisite technical details of my knowledge in this area. Now, what they were trying to do is develop a thing called a gene cassette, call it chromosome 47, or a way to insert these genes that are not just unstable plasmids, but in an extra chromosome where you can take trans-species genetics like the genes for actin myosin from jackals and other different genes that you can insert to create a trans-species superhuman soldier on a female template embryo. They didn't want male because they figured male hormone, testosterone, makes them less likely to respond to an authority figure, and therefore they wanted a super-powered, super strong female template that would literally swarm as a bunch of super soldiers covered by nanotech body armor and using magnetronic helmets to directly connect them to a battlefield matrix. Now, this is long before you saw all these little video games that kids have had and so on. I knew about this back in '78. That's a long time before you saw all these warrior games. In fact, I took care of pilots flying and their Top Gun trainers at Air Force Academy. I was one of their doctors for several years, and they were very worried when they had Atari come in and say that we're going to train your pilots, because they were worried they couldn't turn off the kill reflex because of these real-world video games. Now, what you have to understand is General Poindexter was involved at it publicly admitting that they had to get rid of a number of these so-called upgraded super soldiers. In fact, I took care of, personally, of several of these super soldiers that were upgraded genetically with Gulf 1. I personally took care of them, because this is not secondhand stuff. All right?
Got it.
Now, what they've done, and by releasing these Franken mosquitoes, is they release what's called the OX513A gene complex. And what this does is, supposedly, if there's no tetracycline around, it'll cause the larvae of the female that the male is supposed to infect, but again, they're directly counting this mosquito, so 1 in 200 of the mosquitoes is females, not male. And these gene complexes, what they do is they cause the male to make a sterile larvae, so the larvae dies. So they've already done research and found that it reduced the mosquito population by 85 to 92%. But by their own internal papers, they estimated 3 to 5%. It turned out to be more like 15% of the larvae survive because of two things. Firstly, number one, there's tetracycline, because it's the third largest user of tetracycline in the world. And number two, the gene doesn't necessarily insert in the right place. It can insert in a place where it's less lethal. And number three, what happens is that if you put a lethal gene in a particular position, you're going to select for organisms, for mosquitoes, where the gene's not inserted in the lethal position. It's another part of the genome. So you're going to actually push the genetic evolution to create a mosquito that carries this transposon gene, that is actually able to insert in different places in the genome. Now, what happens is this jumping gene can jump into the gut bacteria of the mosquito and the organisms it's carrying the bacteria in its mouth. It can also insert itself into other bugs. So it can jump trans-species, and Dr. Mei-Wan Ho warned this in 2001 and later documented in 2014. It's already happened.
This is really, now, Bill is talking very fast, but what he is saying is extremely important.
Right. You have to understand that and by the way, we did this research independently. So when we look at Yoichi Shimatsu and what I found out, and I went further than Yoichi. I actually went back and said, okay, I trained under Dr. Robert Brown, who's a bioweaponeer that worked in Bethesda and later on Rutgers campus. And in 1973, I sat at the Brown Derby restaurant in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, where I was doing my honors degree in biochemistry, bacteriology, marine bacteriology.
I thought you were going to say Hollywood. No, that would have been fun.
Yeah. Anyway, and he worked in the Rutgers campus in a Class 4 installation where the thing called the T-virus. Now, you may have heard a movie about the T-virus. This virus was a recombinant virus created in 1971, before 71, that got out of containment 2 years before I was working with him. And when it got out of containment, it was the first day in 10 years he was sick with the flu. And all of his colleagues got incinerated at 2,000 degrees in this negative pressure facility in Rutgers campus. They all died. Now, the way they died is because the virus was an injector core that would paralyze you and cause like a Curare-type paralysis, so you'd suffocate. And it had an injector core, so they recombined the viruses to create a new supervirus that one canister, and I'm quoting him, at 40,000 feet will kill 4.5 to 6.5 million people if they disperse in the upper atmosphere.
Wow.
That's only one of hundreds of bioweapons we and the Russians created with the Biopreparat program. Now, what they've done now with the Gates Foundation and with Oxitec, which is out of Oxford, they've created, and it's been taken over by a company called Intrexon, Better Living Through DNA. That's their quote.
Yeah.
Intrexon out of Maryland.
Wow.
What they've done now is they release these genes into the biosphere, and if I did what's called a FISH test, which is a fluorescent immunoglobulin test, I could take a buccal scraping of your mouth or a blood test and look at your white cells or your buccal cells, your mucosal cells, under a phase contrast microscope with a fluorescent dye, and I could actually see how many places in your genome these genes have jumped into your chromosomes. Now, what I'm doing is I'm raising more questions than answers, but there are specific tests you can determine.
Because the question is, a quick question here, how heavy would the gene transfer load have to be into the chromosome before you began to see obvious and overt changes in the current life of the individual, not necessarily in procreation?
I did tests and research on oxidative DNA markers and Down syndrome. We were working with MSB over 25 years ago with the Canadian government, a government grant, and the MSB out of Ottawa, Canada. And we were the largest supplier of specialized customized formulas for Down syndrome kids in the world. And when I was working with Kent McLeod, we were measuring T-bars, which is oxidized fatty acids, and an oxidized DNA product called 8-hydroxy-2'-deoxyguanosine. Right?
Right. Okay.
Now, the 8-hydroxy-2'-deoxyguanosine in the T-bars tells you if there's levels of nitric oxide radical and hydroperoxy radical. And when those levels are really high, any pathogen inside the host is stressed. Now, they discovered at the research facility in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which is one of the places where we had a bioweapon facility in the 1960s. This is, by the way, before John F. Kennedy got assassinated, because one of the bioweaponeers working on it was none other than the supposed assassin of John F. Kennedy. Did you know that? Have you ever heard of the book called Dr. Mary's Monkey?
Oh, yeah. I interviewed the author and spent a lot of time on that book.
Right. Well, the fact is that what they were doing is they discovered that if you take an organism, let's say a ferret, and you blast it with a cyclotron, which is used for cancer chemotherapy with cobalt-60, and you stress the organism with, you dramatically increase the rate of mutation toward more pathogenic and lethal strains. So, for example, let's say take any organism. Let's say they did this recently, for example, with the H1N1 flu from 2009, and one of the scientists decided to say, well, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take ferrets, and I'm going to blast the ferret with radiation, and then I'm going to take that pathogen and move it to the next ferret. So after 10 generations of blasting the ferrets, without doing anything, no chemicals, no gene manipulation, no CRISPR, no messing around, they made the virus extremely lethal, the H1N1 flu. Okay? That's all you got to do. Okay? So if you have a stressed host because of a gene imbalance or radiation, and you can measure simply nitric oxide free radical, which is easy to do. Easy sneezy blood test. Easy saliva test. You can measure several markers. You can measure, for example, the presence of high levels of nitric oxide free radical. You can measure oxidative stress, which is T-bars or oxidized DNA. And if they're high and you got an RNA virus, it turns RNA doesn't have a good fidelity for reproducing itself. So the RNA-based viruses like the filoviruses like West Nile, chikungunya, and Zika, okay, all mutate at 10,000 times faster than DNA viruses. That's published research.
Amazing.
10,000 times. So if you have a host that's under stress, any pathogen, we're not talking about just viruses, any pathogen, bacteria, whatever, is going to mutate to a more lethal strain at 10,000 times faster than DNA viruses. But they'll all mutate. Doesn't matter if it's a bacteria or a pathogen or parasite or whatever. It's going to get, you're going to selectively mutate for more lethal forms of it. Now, so you have two things working here that you should measure in a host. So let's say someone comes into, say, Houston, and they've been in Brazil for 6 months. And you do the test. You can measure a PCR test to measure their saliva, their blood, right, and their urine. Because we now know that it persists in urine. We don't know how long it does, so we know it's a sexually transmitted disease. We know it can be passed by, for example, let's say kissing. Therefore, we don't know if it lasts for 60 days, 90 days, or persists forever. For example, we know that Ebola, because of the remote site in the testicles, if you have Ebola and you recover from it, you are permanently going to shed Ebola virus in your urine. In other words, if you don't wear a condom, you're going to give the female that you're having sex with Ebola, which will then go to the uterus, and it's going to stay there until the fetus tries to grow, and it'll cause fetal death.
Right.
Okay? And it can cause the mother to become affected too, but the fact is, it's a sexually transmitted disease. So we don't know yet, because we haven't tested. And we don't know how long it persists. But the two tests that need to be done are the PCR test for the presence of the virus, the antibody test to see if there previously was a virus, IgG and IgM, and what's called a FISH test, and you can do saliva or blood or both to see if the genes now are in the host. Because if the genes are in the host, they're going to not only transfer to, let's say, a blood meal from a mosquito in that part of the country. Let's say that person moves from Texas to Minnesota, and they're carrying not just the Zika virus, maybe that's gone already, but now they're carrying the genes so that the local mosquitoes in Minnesota bite them, and now those genes are jumped into the local mosquito population, and they're going to start modifying the hosts of local animals or people, and modifying their genetics also of plants. So they're going to start modifying everything in the biosphere. This is a gene plague that's gradually going to spread out. So that's why the time sequence of the presence of this double-stranded DNA Franken-gene and the presence of a mutated virus like Zika virus, and again, these people are sloppy. I would guarantee you that if you tested for the presence of more than one pathogen, you probably, in the children that got Zika, you may have more than one virus. You could have cytomegalovirus.
I think you're right. And I think you just put your finger on it when you said people are sloppy. People are sloppy. The work is not being done at the highest level as most of us would think. It always happens, correct.
Right. I was a reference office, medical, internal medicine, family medicine office, infectious disease for the Center for Disease Control in Denver. I had the special viral cultures transferred, so other people would ask and say, what the heck is growing? I was a reference lab. I'd know before anybody else what specific substrain of flu or other virus was spreading through the population because I did the tests and sent them off to the reference lab. Now, the problem is people don't do that. And I tell people, unless you measure, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. So, for example, with Yoichi, he thinks it's an and/or. It doesn't have to be an and/or. It can be both. You've got Zika virus and or more than one pathogen. Maybe we got Zika virus and cytomegalovirus or chikungunya. And what you need to do is it activates a process called UPR. UPR is the unfolding protein response in the endoplasmic reticulum. And when it happens, it stimulates a thing called apoptosis. Now, because the virus, the Zika virus or the cytomegalovirus, are neurotropic, they go specifically to the endoplasmic reticulum, which is the one that makes your proteins, not just the GATA proteins, but all the proteins. And if it stimulates this UPR response, the nerve cells die. So you end up with the cortic, basically the human part of the brain dies, and what's left is the reptilian brain. Now, we know that if the gene persists, you may have other long-term effects we don't know. We know that it increases the risk of Guillain-Barré paralysis, which means there's particular protein antigens on the nerve cells which stimulate the immune system to attack the nervous system. And of the 1 in 5 people that get symptoms, 1 in 5 of those will get mild, moderate, or severe Guillain-Barré paralysis. If it spreads high enough, it'll cut off your respiratory drive center and you die. That's really unusual to see that much of an increase. Now, we don't know if long-term, if it will cause, I call it zombification syndrome, where you start to lose cortical neurons. We don't know if it's going to cause a decorticate brain, like a zombie syndrome. We don't know if it's going to attack other organ systems. For example, trypanosome cruzi, which is the Chagas disease, how many people do you think are estimated to be infected with it in Central and South America?
It's in the millions.
100 million.
Yeah. And it's 600,000 in Texas alone, I think.
Right. What is the lethality over a period of 20 years?
80%, 90%?
100.
Is it 100? Wow.
100%. If you don't get treatment, now, of course, the regular treatment that the doctors use is useless. Well, we have nutraceuticals that will knock out the pathogen, and you can show your antibody levels and your DNA load down to zero.
You can kill that organism.
I can kill any organism with our nutraceuticals.
I'm sure that you could also do it with a Rife instrument with the right frequencies, just like you can.
It'll help because you remember what you're doing is Rife. You see, everything in the body is harmonic frequencies. But I like to use, I don't like I call a magic bullet. I call a magic orchestra. We have a number of things I call triple threat. Our new iodine, Tesla-activated Edgar Casey iodine, the Allison Med, and our ionic silver, which is the only silver in the world that is 100% lethal. It's not just a 1/10 of 1,000%.
That doesn't mean you're going to die if you take it. It means it kills what ails you.
Pathogens, yeah. And by the way, it doesn't kill off your normal probiotic bacteria, which you don't want to do.
That's crucial. I remember.
If you kill those off, by the way, you get an overgrowth of anaerobes that affects your blood-brain barrier and increases the risk of cancer and a form of dysbiotic-induced schizophrenia. All
right. Hold on, Dr. D, and we'll be right back with more in just a few minutes with Bill.
Why do people order Life Change Tea? Because Life Change Tea helps the digestive system. Life Change Tea helps the colon unclog. The tea also helps with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and many, many other health issues. Life Change Tea also tastes great. And Life Change Tea is not just green tea. Life Change Tea is a unique blend of 8 different herbs that go to town, cleaning your body of harmful toxins, bacteria, and parasites. Our tea is number 1. Are you ready for your life change? Let the tea help you. Log on to our online store of helpful products to get your body on track. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Or you can call us at 928-308-0408. That's 928-308-0408. Not all tea is equal. Read our website of all the factual testimonies that prove that Life Change Tea is working. Health is important, and our quality of life is very important. Don't wait to order. Expect a life change with Life Change Tea at getthetea.com.
You're listening to Jeff nationwide and worldwide on the internet on the Rense Radio Network.
If you've been listening to this program for any length of time, you'll know that Fukushima, the greatest calamity in history, has now, as I've been warning since 3/11, killed off virtually the whole North Pacific Ocean and especially up and down the entire West Coast. The radiation is migrating inland and is moving across the entire country. There's only one proven defender to radiation exposure, the brilliant Chernobyl-proven discovery of Dr. Michael Kiriak, which combines the 4 most potent and powerful algae on the planet, imported to the U.S. and known as bio-superfood. I've taken bio-superfood every day for several years now and want you to do the same for your sake and the health and safety of your family and loved ones. Take the banner at the top of Rense.com and prepare to learn how to save your life.
We have a great story from someone who's helped themselves to heal by using the botanical known as carnivora. And we have a guest right now. Her name is Joni Nichols. This is quite a story.
Yes, it is. And Robert, I was a mess. I had numerous infections. My hair was falling out all over the furniture. Mm-hmm. One of the scariest things was that my legs were swelling up out of control. It came to a head. Within 24 hours, I had gone into a coma.
Holy tamale.
Mom and Dad decided to get me carnivore as a 6-week program. Within 2 weeks, Robert, the first thing I noticed was that I felt better waking up. Then I noticed that my hair wasn't all over the furniture. I'm like excited.
And she credits all of it to her carnivora protocol.
This is Richard Ostro, owner for Carnivora Research International. Call 1-866-836-8735. That's 1-866-836-8735 or visit carnivora.com, carnivora.com. Call now.
Planning to buy food storage? Wait a minute. Many companies try to confuse you with the number of servings they sell. It's not about the number of servings, it's about the number of calories. In emergencies, calories mean survival. Go to ReadySupplyFoods.com for a comparison of leading companies. Ready Supply Foods sells the most calories per dollar of any company. Our 23 entrees and breakfasts are delicious and full of nutritious calories. The new leader in value and quality. Go to ReadySupplyFoods.com today. By now, you know the smart way to buy emergency food storage is calories per dollar. Ready Supply Foods sells you 50% more food for your money. GMO-free, 25-year shelf life, great tasting, and free shipping. You need 2,000 calories per day under ideal conditions. Most 30-day kits don't have enough calories to sustain you for more than a week. They just don't have enough nutrition to do the job. See the comparisons for yourself at ReadySupplyFoods.com. We are the new leader in value and quality. Go to ReadySupplyFoods.com today.
All right, let's get back to our conversation with Dr. Bill Deagle. All right, Bill, so up to this point, most people are looking at this Zika virus outbreak as something they need to avoid getting. We can't get Zika virus. We don't want to get it. Now we're being told that it is a sexually transmissible disease months after infection apparently subsides. This is not a good sign. That means it takes up in various places in the body, and foments itself into a reservoir of sorts and is transmissible, vector that way. If it's in body fluids, in urine and semen and blood and saliva, it has to be considered a human-to-human transmissible virus, not just a sexually transmissible disease, an
right.
STD.
So when I hear other experts, and I'm not going to name specific names, and they say that they've already identified it's in urine and that it persists, it is, by definition, a sexually transmitted disease. Now we have to identify several answers. How long does it persist? What is the viral load? And can it cause what's called an inoculum to cause an infective state in another individual?
Right. We know that Ebola lasted, how long? It subsisted for 8 or 9 months at least after infection.
No, if you survived a lethal Ebola and you're a male, 100% of males who survived Ebola have it in their semen.
Permanently?
Years later. Permanently.
Oh, okay. All right. So I didn't know we had enough time to extrapolate.
It's called a remote site. Just like it can come back in the eyes. There was a doctor that got it.
Yeah, I remember that.
A year afterward, it showed back up, and he had an acute eye disease.
Yeah.
And they discovered when they extracted the fluid from his eye, he grew Ebola.
Yeah.
This is after surviving the Ebola. Okay?
Yeah.
So what people should start to realize is we've got two problems here. The Zika is actually, believe it or not, how as horrible as it is, and it's probably going to result in basically calls for women to permanently not have children in these countries.
We're already hearing rumors about that now. This is a third world. It's a third world birth control issue already.
Anybody who thinks that it's just going to go away is delusional. So when I hear wavering,
oh no, Gates didn't design it to go away.
Right. So, for example, when they say, well, women don't get pregnant for 2 years in any of these countries where Zika is now endemic, they're lying to the people. If Zika persists, you cannot get pregnant, period. That's it.
We may have, let me say something, Bill. We may have just witnessed the end of free procreative behaviors in the human species, at least in the third world and wherever Zika is found. This is a huge, huge, huge issue.
Right. Now, the problem is that people say, well, we need to control human population. Hogwash. As soon as a culture starts to stabilize and have healthy environments and a stable economy, they don't keep on reproducing. In fact, if anything, you find in all Western cultures, their population starts to collapse. If you look at Japan and Germany and elsewhere, and Russia, they actually have a negative population. They're likely to literally depopulate themselves into non-existence. The real issue here is Islam is populating significantly above the bar, and in every country which it moves, whether it's Norway or Sweden or Europe or Japan, they overpopulate the local population because of their structure of their society. Okay? The fact is the Zika virus issue is, I think, a direct bioweapon attack against human reproduction.
No question. None.
Now, what they want to do, and I'm going to just lay this all out, they want to, and I've been saying this for decades, more than 2.5 decades, the globalists want to outlaw wild reproduction. They consider a man and a woman having a child normally, not in a laboratory.
Oh, no. You're going to have to get a license?
You're going to have to get a license, and you're going to also have polar body exclusion. For example, DARPA discovered that there's a specific gene complex called the NMDA receptor, and if you find extra copies of it, it means you're more likely to resist authority. They can actually determine this using gene markers in your polar body of the embryo in as little as a 2 or 3 multi-cell stage where you have a polar body as the embryo is developing. If you do a polar body exclusion with these DNA markers, you can actually eliminate an embryo before it even implants to grow an individual that may resist authority.
Wow.
You follow me?
Yeah.
Right. So you can actually make designer humans that have blue eyes, a certain height, certain IQ, won't resist authority, et cetera, and are going to have...
That's what everybody blamed the Germans was wanting to do.
Well, no, they have all the tools now to do it.
I know.
And all the tools that they wanted to have back then, they have now. Now, people also need to know this, too, that when the Vatican was involved with the Operation Paperclip, our OSA, and the CIA, and all our secret agencies, including the largest in the world, the NSA, are all complete 100% transfers from Germany. And the Luftwaffe never surrendered, by the way, to the West. They transferred their nuclear and other technology, including anti-gravitonics and space-based weapons, etc., to the West as part of the deal, and 100,000 technicians. So people need to know that in a sense, Germany never surrendered carte blanche to the West. People don't know that, do they? They know that even after Germany, a lot of Germans died, even in death camps in Russia, because we allowed them, including a lot of American and European soldiers died at the hands of the Russians.
The Soviets.
The Soviets, because this was part of the game. The external game was Germany lost. No, they didn't, actually. The high-level German scientists and technicians and other people that transferred literally, in a sense, became like a metastasis and took over our agencies. And in fact, since the death of John F. Kennedy, we are completely run by secret agencies, including the CIA. The CIA and the NSA run America and run the world. That's why when you look at people like Zuckerberg from Facebook and these other agencies like Google, what you really understand here is that the secret agencies have taken over not only America but the whole world. They stretch the skin of nation states over them. They have the proxy of the United Nations and the World Health Organization, but the secret agencies and their high-level proxies run everything, Tier 1 science, etc. Okay? Now, why is this dangerous? Because what they've done now is they've released a platform to weaponize any pathogen in the animal or human population and to change genetics. To change the genetics of animal and human life on Earth. And these jumping genes, we don't know what the consequences are. All we can say is they're bad. So, for example, let's say I posit...
This is not being regulated. Excuse me, Bill. This is not being regulated. You got to understand, this is like the Wild West of genes. It's crazy.
Right. I'm going to read off from Domain One Host 2014 report. It says, has the GM nightmare finally come true? So down to I'm going to read the word for word what he said here.
Yeah.
So down to the key question was the Oxitex GM Aedes aegypti male sterile mosquito released in Waro engineered with a piggyback transposon? Yes, it was. And that creates a highly significant possibility that Oxitex release of this GM mosquito led directly to the development of Brazil's microcephaly epidemic. Now, the way it did it is it weaponized by putting the host in stress. This is the part that I think you wish he missed. You have two problems. The bigger one is the genetic plague, but what it did is it changed the host to make it more oxidatively stressed. And that sped the evolution. Now, when they did a gene test on the number of gene base pairs in the Zika virus, before and after the release of these Franken mosquitoes, there's only 15 base pair changes, but it's enough to dramatically increase the risk of the UPR response, which causes apoptosis of brain cells, to cause a massive increase in microcephaly, and to cause a massive increase in genetically in Guillain-Barré ascending paralysis that can kill you. And God knows what other diseases if it persists. And we have two problems. We've got not only Zika virus, but maybe other viruses, but we also have the genes which can jump through your genome. Let's say initially it's in a percentage of your gut cells, and then it moves from there to the Kupffer cells in your liver, and then it moves from there to your kidneys, and then it moves and starts genetically modifying the cardiomyocytes in your heart. We don't know what it's going to do, just like we know that Trypanosoma cruzi, which is a Chagas disease, can literally eventually cause a cardiomyopathy where your heart dilates so the valves don't work anymore over 20 years, and your heart muscle starts to liquefy.
20 years, that's it.
20 years, you're dead, okay? Unless you go to Dr. Deagle and I give you the things to knock out the Trypanosoma cruzi. If you go to what's called dilatory cardiomyopathy, you're dead. It can also liquefy your brain or your liver or other organs, solid organs, okay? So what people need to understand is we're not just dealing with the Zika virus, which has been weaponized in this new platform of oxidatively stressed hosts. We're dealing with genes that can jump around and God knows what the hell they'll do. So let's say this transposon piggyback gene, and I'm going to read some more of what he says here. These mosquitoes inbred with the wild population, remember 1 in 200 is female, not male, because they hand sort them, that the promiscuous piggyback transposon, now present local, takes the opportunity to jump into Zika virus. It didn't jump into Zika. This is something that they made an error here because it doesn't change directly the RNA virus because a dual-strand DNA did not change the RNA. It stressed the host to make the Zika virus mutate. This is where they made a mistake. And then the process of mutating the strains of Zika to take selective advantage, they became more virulent, and that's correct. And then finally, you can test that. You can test this theory. For example, you can test like Dr. Henry Nyman does, the gene ontogeny to say, okay, what's happened to the virus? Why is it? And the way to test it is real simple. Take this version, because they have them in stock, of the Zika virus, and take these what's called nude mice, we call pups, basically a little nude mouse baby, okay? And what you do is you expose to Zika virus, and it causes apoptosis of their cortex, then you know that it's a more lethal form causing this UPR, which you can see under the microscope. So you take these nude mice, if you want to call it babies, and you expose it to the current strain or the strain before the genetic modification caused by these Franken mosquitoes, and there's only 15 base pairs out of 10,000 that had to change. That's actually what's been calculated out and actually analyzed, that has shown that's the only little change you need to do to make this maybe 100 times more lethal. Now, they're not just weaponizing Zika. What I'm saying is that any pathogen, bacteria, virus, parasite, in these oxidatively stressed, genetically stressed hosts, will over time be weaponized. So, for example, let's say it gets in the population of mosquitoes in Minnesota. It's going to take whatever pathogens are in those mosquitoes and make them more deadly. Bacteria, viruses, parasites, God knows what. They can cause cancer. They can cause autoimmune diseases. They can cause degenerative changes. They can cause developmental delay.
Wow.
Cause all kinds of horrors that we have no idea. Plus, the genes interfere directly. For example, when you start modifying one gene, they found this out, for example, with the unstable plasmid for Bacillus thuringiensis toxin they put in Mon 80 corn.
Right.
And what they found is it affected hundreds of genes. Now, the Zika virus piggyback thing can insert itself because it has its own what's called transposon gene complex. It actually has an endonuclease to insert itself wherever the hell it wants to go. But they discovered that you don't even need that inserting transposon gene complex. That if you just had the raw gene, every genome of every living thing that double-stranded DNA has their own
is a target
mechanism to insert that.
That's scary.
Now what you have is what I call a gene plague, where this can literally insert itself in, say, 100 places in your genome, or an animal or plant, and the consequences are completely unknown.
How many positions are there potentially in the human genome?
Well, you've got the whole set of genes. If you strung out all your genes, they're going to go for,
thousands and
thousands of meters, okay?
Yeah.
So you literally have tens of thousands of places where it could pop in.
So
now,
a few hundred isn't necessarily going to make you grow a second set of ears, but it's not a good thing to be doing, period.
Well, the most likely thing it's going to do is it's going to interfere with fertility, number one. It's going to interfere with organogenesis. And if it's in a fetus that's under oxidative stress, it's going to interfere with organ development. Now, I know that you wish you should get into what's called the GATA genes. And that may be true, but it doesn't. You don't need to just transpose the idea it gets into GATA 1, 2, 3 and all this stuff in these proteins. What you have to understand is it's getting into the genome in multiple places, interfering with multiple genes in totally unknown ways. But it's going to increase stress, and the stress markers are easy to measure. You could take an animal and measure the nitric oxide free radical easy with a test strip, just in the saliva of the animal. And if the level's right through the ceiling, you know you have a stressed host, that if there's a pathogen in that host of any kind, hepatitis, virus, whatever, it's going to get stressed, and the stressed virus is going to become more lethal. So you're going to see super strains of, if, for example, I'll give you a good example. We now know that the Zika virus is probably in Haiti. And so a witch doctor decides, or somebody travels from Haiti to West Africa because there's a lot of travel back and forth because they have similar religion, okay?
Yep.
And they decide to have, and I've taken care of kids in Georgia that never had sex or an IV drug that were dying of AIDS because they drank basically turkey blood and human blood for people bleeding in a common bowl with a zombie ceremony being performed where they have to bleed into this bowl and put all these herbs in it and then call up the zombie spirits and whatever the heck they're doing. Now, this same religious practice is carried on in West Africa where Ebola is. So if these weaponizing genes get into the local animal population, we already know the Ebola virus has already killed off, in some areas, up to 95% of the great apes. They're all dead. It's already happened.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whereas all these places are what we call nests of all kinds of weird and strange viruses that are pretty local, but if they become weaponized by being in a host that's under oxidative stress, they're going to become considerably more deadly. In other words, you could take Ebola and make it 10 times more lethal and more spreadable at a lower inoculum or number of viral particles to produce an infective state. And now you got something that's way, way more dangerous. You could have the flu. You could have a weaponizing influence where the gene changes in a number of human beings that are infected could now become mixing vessels as a platform to weaponize influenza. So now you got a super flu. Now people don't understand, how did the 1918 flu occur? They had pigs in Fort Lupton, Kansas, and they were trying to make a tetanus vaccine, and they had the military base there. So they had humans they're mixing human blood with humans that had flu, with the pig blood, and they created a new recombinant. And they took the tetanus vaccine that they were making and they injected it into our soldiers going over to Spain, which is why they were called the Spanish flu. Most of them didn't get sick until their plane finally arrived, and a day or two later they got violently ill, and that's such an inflammatory reaction of their airways. Their mucus plugs blocked them up, and they got all blue, so they'd run around with oxygen tank trying to make them pink, and they'd expire. One of them had a very vigorous immune system, and the younger and the more vigorous your immune inflammatory response, the quicker you died. Okay?
Wow.
So my grandmother lost a sister first, 1918, and after they buried her, the brother wanted to hold her before they closed the casket.
Oh, my.
And a week later, they buried him. Okay, so I can say this firsthand. People need to understand what's coming is a weaponizing platform for super plagues that will spread across the earth and kill much of the human population. And this gene plague that I'm saying isn't just Zika virus. It's going to not only modify the population so human reproduction is going to be off, but also it's going to literally oxidatively stress any pathogen that's in the host, including flu virus, chikungunya, West Nile virus.
So it'll supercharge whatever you're carrying, all right?
Carrying anywhere these jumping genes go. And I don't see any reason why the jumping genes aren't going to eventually spread across the entire planet. I can't see any reason why.
No.
Because no one's at the airport saying we're going to...
They're already incipient endemic. They're on their way.
Right. So, for example, if I was designing a public health system, I'd say, if you come to a port of entry, we're going to do three things. We're going to test you for PCR of saliva, blood, and urine. We're going to test you, number two, for the presence of the fish test, to see if you're carrying the Zika virus super jumping gene. And number three, we're going to test oxidative markers to see if you are already under stress. So whatever you got in your body, whether it's dysbiotic bacteria or hepatitis virus, you're going to weaponize those viruses because they're in a host that's under stress. So what I'm saying is you're going to see the emergence of super plagues. Now you don't need to create it in a lab. Every individual, every wild animal, every rat, every given monkey, every organism, including plants, can now weaponize viruses because they're under stress from the genes caused by this jumping gene.
Now keep in mind, this is new. It has been done. The people behind it knew exactly what the potentials are, and we're hoping for that. We may have seen the beginning of license-only birth procedures for developed countries, and ultimately all countries.
Well, who is the greatest contributor in terms of the Sakhalin Island seed vault? It is the Gates Foundation.
Gates. Bill and Melinda.
Bill and Melinda. So in other words, you despoil the genetic heritage of the living things.
And then you own the Holy Grail.
And then you own the Holy Grail of the actual non-despoiled seed vault.
Yeah.
600 feet above sea level, inside the Arctic Circle in an highway.
And that's what they're going to use to repopulate the planet after everybody dies?
Yeah, because what they're doing is they're terraforming the Earth. They're terraforming the Earth, whether it's for sci-fi movie for a space invader.
Yeah.
Or for a small...
But that's the question. Who are they terraforming it for? That's the question. Are they being directed to do it for an off-planet intelligence? Are they working with an off-planet? Nothing would surprise me, frankly. I don't have the answers. I only have questions.
And some of it I don't know if we have time tonight to get too deep into it, but you have to understand that all of the leaders of our planet are, I call human clay or flesh, being avatared by transdimensional entities. Now, in the Bible, they call them demons, but I call them Draco-reptilian, basically avatars.
Mm-hmm.
You do not, for example, if you look at Hillary Clinton and look at her pastor or Barack Obama, you see individuals who had their psyche shattered by a form of satanic abuse. For example, I researched and prayed on what happened to Barack Obama. And if you look at the history of this child that later became a very aggressive bisexual narcissist, we are seeing a person that's shattered. If you could look inside his psyche, you'd see a little cringing boy in a corner by the name of Barry Soetoro. The entity we call Barack Obama is completely manufactured.
Correct.
If you look at Hillary Clinton, we'd see a little girl in a peacoat going to a dark building in the middle of the night in New England, and they were doing human sacrifice and sex magic ritual and drinking blood and eating flesh. Because her family were Rodhams, have been wizards and warlocks for many centuries. What you have to understand here is the people that rule Earth are Satanists. Now, that might find people say, I don't believe in religion, I'm not religious.
Not a religion. No.
It's not religion. You have to understand it's not a matter of whether or not you believe that what they believe is real or not, but they believe it. And they do this. And they shatter the psyche of their children so they can literally make them...
Once they shatter the psyche, that opens the door for DID, MPD. You can end up with commonly 10, 12, 14 personality types. Some have many more.
Think of it this way. There's pathogens in the human body, bacteria and viruses and nanobacteria, etc.
Yeah.
But there's pathogens in the psyche and the soul. And what you shatter their psyche...
It's so important.
Them up to soul pathogens.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Oh, yeah.
And these people, basically, we've been told by our rulers and our leaders, will only give you a person that has a soul pathogen avataring and controlling them. Okay?
Yeah.
Like the archons, if you want to talk about that. That's what we're dealing with. And it's all through all the ancient holy books, including the Bible. This is not an anomaly. Every single religion group on earth understands this. Everyone. This is not, that just group believes in this group. No. If you actually dig deeper, you find, especially in the Bible, everyone knew this. Anybody who's in the know knows that high-level masonry, for example, when I bring on Leo Zagami, everybody knows that this is exactly how the world is ruled. All high-level masons know this. Everyone. Okay? All
33rd degree.
Right. If you look at Reiki and mind control, if you look at anything that actually is the ancient science of the high priest and how they control the pharaohs and the pharaonic high priests, this technology, this soul technology, has been used for many, many centuries. This is nothing new.
Extraordinary. All right, we're out of time, Bill. You want to wrap it up real quick? This is what should people? Wait, hold on. What should people really worry about now regarding Zika?
First thing they want to do is, number one, we don't know all the ways the body has mechanisms to prevent jumping genes from doing damage. We know that if you keep your body alkaline and if you kill off the pathogens. I've written an article on immigration and an article on the Zika virus.
You got to detox. You really need to get rid of all parasites. They're a big drag on your whole body.
Right. You also get your body in an alkaline state, and you need proper DNA repairs that are
correct.
To that. Yeah. Now, the article that I wrote on Zika, I have a protocol in that article, which I'll send over to you, and you can post up a section of the articles I'm going to send over, because I'm sending an article on every major issue that human beings are now being exposed to, whether it's immigration or the issue of Trump. And I support Trump, by the way. I want people to know I believe in reverse speech, Dave John out. I know that I call Trump God's Trump. If we don't get Trump and we get any other Republican candidate or any other Democrat,
any,
we are, as they say,
it's over.
We're done.
It's that this is the last chance, folks.
The human race is done.
Yeah.
Because what they're planning for us.
Turn the music down, Todd. Please.
It's so horrendous that people can't grasp where we're going. And I don't want to tell you the whole of what I know, but I can tell you we better pray hard that Trump is not killed and he survives and becomes a candidate.
And we better work hard to try to help those who don't get it have a chance to make up their own minds, hopefully on the proper side of the...
They want to start a war in the Mideast. They want to. They were pushing for it, although...
The
Saudis are like they're totally incompetent, these people.
If the Saudis announced, Bill, here, let me try this out on you. If the Iranians had announced last week that they had nuclear bombs, that would have been in the news media around the clock, 25 hours a day. The Saudis announced it. Oh, we have nuclear bombs. The story died. It was completely swept under the rug after its first erudition.
Saudi security forces and the Israeli Mossad are like the trigger finger and the thumb for the CIA.
That's
they
perfect.
Work together often on both agencies, are actually certified in both. So people need to know that. Marvin Bush contracted the Israeli Mossad and Saudi security forces to put in the nukes in the World Trade Center. And people need to know what's really going on is that they're all directly connected under the CIA.
Okay. Yeah, you heard it. You heard it.
Saudis do this. We fully knew this 25 years ago. I had Israeli intelligence send me satellite photos showing the CC-3 missiles that the Chinese gave them and the nukes that they had. I had this from inside the Israeli IDF and Defense Forces 20 years ago. I knew the fact that the Saudis had nukes. They paid for it with AQ Khan, which we gave them.
They bought it. AQ, I haven't heard his name in years. They bought them either from the Israelis, through the Israelis, or the Pakistanis, or something.
Look, the reason why Saudi Arabia has no intentions whatsoever of walking and attacking Israel is because the Saud family are crypto Jews that came from
the Wahhabis. Absolutely, the creation of World Zionism.
They are basically of the Muslim high-level Masonic division of crypto Jews. That's what they are.
All right, we got to go, Bill. Thank you. That was extraordinary. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. Check out the articles. I'll send them over to Jeff. They'll be over there also on our website on the Zika virus and also my critical issues forum on immigration and many other issues. It'll all be posted there.